Hello and welcome to another episode of Workplace Wizards podcast, brought to you by Small World Solutions. And our motto is nothing changes if nothing changes. And our goal is to help organizations improve their workplace environment, also by increasing their productivity. And I'm your host, Arnold Smalley. I go by the name of Arnell. And we have your second co-host joining us right now is Gavin Wong.
Hi, Arnell. I'm Gavin, and I go by the name of Gavin.
I call you Gav.
Gav's fine. I don't mind.
All right, good. Gavin, well, our podcast today is about seeing self-awareness in action.
Mm.
You know, that's what we're talking about today. How can we help? How can we help workplace environments? How can we help improve workplace environments? And these are some of the topics that we'll talk about. And today's topic is self-awareness in action. What does that mean, Gavin?
Well, it could be many things, but I think in our context today, what we're talking about is that our awareness of our emotions. Okay, so how we're feeling and how that's going to impact on us when we're working with other people and trying to develop those relationships. And quite a good example of that actually is because I was quite annoyed this morning, I have to say. I was driving down the road today and I'm in a new area and I love where I live. People are so rude. They will not thank you if you let them through. Drives me crazy. And I was getting quite angry and irate about it and I was cussing about this kind of stuff.
Wait, Gavin, you were cursing?
I was cussing. I can't tell you what I was saying, but I was getting quite angry about things. And I thought, well, actually, do I want to be feeling the way I'm feeling? Okay. And it made me stop because that's a really important question, actually. When we are getting emotional, we need to be asking ourselves, actually, do I want to feel this way? The reason that's such a powerful question is that sometimes our emotions overtake how we're feeling and our logic. Okay, now actually, I was on my own. I was quite happy to cuss people out. I wasn't affecting anybody. I wasn't hurting anybody. It was a bit cathartic. But there was a danger actually where if we allow our emotions to get the better of us, particularly in the workplace environment,
right,
actually we might be affecting our relationships with other people. And that's really important. And that's where self-regulation is really in action, where we allow our emotions to overtake what we're doing and impacts and influences our relationships with other people negatively. And therefore we need to be able to check ourselves. So actually, is this just an emotional response or do I need to do something about it?
Okay, Gavin, you know, I have a similar story to that, Gavin. I have a similar story to that. I remember one time when I was driving and a car actually cut me off. But the car, on the back of the car, had a bumper sticker and it said WWJD. And you know, I know that in our bookstore at our church, you know, and several bookstores at other Christian bookstores, that sticker would stand for what would Jesus do? And the funny thing is about that, Gavin, just like you, I was ready to start cursing and pointing and giving them my, you know, one individual finger and you know, there are all kinds of things were going through my mind at that point. But looking at the sticker made me stop for a second and say, what would Jesus do? You know, and here's the thing. And I'm not saying that any of you guys need to be religious or you need to be in the Christian. And you could take that WWJD and put any initial in there. What would, you know, I use Gavin. What would Gavin do? You know, because that's somebody I look up to. That's somebody as a role model for me. And that's somebody I admire. So what would a person do that you admire? What would a role model someone you look up to, what would they do? So my thing would be WWGD. What would Gavin do? You know, so you don't have to use what WWJD. You can use WWGD. You can do
well, I love that.
You can be like me
WWE.
and say, what would Gavin do in this situation? Well, obviously, we already know he would have cursed the person out, but, but in his scenario. But what we're saying is, if you take the time, if you actually take the time to think, what would Jesus do, or what would any significant other do, you're actually starting your self-regulation.
Yes.
Because
yes.
what you have done, you've already proven your self-awareness, because you understand something triggered your emotion. So now that you have something that triggered your emotion, now you go into the self-regulation portion of it, where you take a step back and you say, you know something, what would somebody else do?
Yeah.
And that right there, just that split moment, causes you to quit thinking of what you want to do at that moment. You know, do you want to retaliate? Do you want to go get in front of them and cut them off? Do you want to curse them out and maybe have two cars get into altercation and a physical altercation where people are using their cars to ram each other? And I mean, the situations can get so overblown by not controlling our emotion, not recognizing that an emotion has been triggered, and how to self-regulate and do that. And here's a key point to this, Gavin. You know that the action is only 10% of the situation. The action itself, even though how big that action you may think it is, it's only 10% of the situation. 90% of that situation is how you react.
Okay.
Because that is the major controlling factor for everything. So 10% is that action that caused you, that may have pushed the button. 10% is that. But how you react is 90% of it.
Yes. And I think that's a really good, the idea of thinking about what would Jesus do, or what would Smalley do, or Gavin do, it's actually quite powerful in terms of self-regulation, because self-regulation requires you to understand, firstly, you're emotional.
It's
so
been triggered.
You need to understand that it's being triggered. And also at that point, it's not just knowing there's a trigger. What are you going to do about that? Because ultimately what you want the brain to do is come away from the emotion and go into the human part of the brain and go logical.
Ooh.
And that's why that question about what would someone do is no longer an emotional context. It's about logically, you're now thinking and you're changing where your brain's going. It's really powerful. And actually, if you look at things like emotional intelligence, there's many things that people do for triggers. I think Obama, when he felt triggered, I think he used to straighten his arm. So
really?
before I think it's I have to check it, but there was some movement that he had that when he was getting about to, get emotional, he would just check himself and then come with a logic. I think I'll have to check it out. There's a clip where he's giving this speech and someone shouts out, and he's just about to go, and he kind of stretches his arm, and he comes back all eloquently and
I have to definitely see that, Gavin. If you could point that out to me and show me that, I would love to see that. Because that's interesting. And talk about other people. We definitely want to get back to the workplace environment, but I want to give this other example. Because my cousin, I call him Big L. Big L is he's that person. We grew up together. We're pretty much the same age. And he said one day to me, Arnell, how come you keep making the right choices? Because every time I come to a fork in the road, how come I seem to always make the wrong choice? And, I was just listening to him. And so he's actually writing a book right now, because his life took him to, several different negative aspects of life where he's had to struggle and deal with those things. But he looks at what I've done in 25 years in law enforcement, and now I started my own business and writing a book on several things. So he looked at that and he goes, I want to write a book, and he wants to be about the fork in the road. And every time you come to a fork in the road, you actually have 4 decisions. You can take the road to the right, You can make the road to the left. You can just stop right there,
Mhm.
or you could possibly turn back.
Mm.
And he says that every decision he made was always the wrong decision.
Right.
And so he's writing a book about that. So that's one of the things that what he said was he never stopped to think about what would be best for me in the future. He
Yes.
went with the quick decision, and his emotions and his ego got to the best of him, and that's what sent him down the wrong road each time. So therefore, when it comes to a workplace environment, if we get triggered at work, there's a fork in the road.
Yeah.
There's a fork in the road, and it's all about choices, Gavin. It's all about choices.
It is about choices, and actually it goes back to the motto, nothing changes. And what I like about your cousin is that he's realized now, actually, you can't keep doing the same thing. He's going to have to change something about himself. And it doesn't really matter how he's doing it, but he's decided, actually, I could carry on. I'm always going to be encouraged to go down the wrong route because I'm going to be emotional about things. I'm not regulating my emotions well enough. So he's actually realized that, and that's fantastic because now he's got a better opportunity now to take the right path. It's always going to be difficult, paths aren't easy to choose, but I just love that because he's realized nothing changes if nothing changes.
Wow, that's a great way to put the motto in there, Gavin. I appreciate that. What else we have to add?
Well, I think we could knock it on the head there, Simone. I think that's a nice thing to think about. I think, really important that people are naturally emotional. Okay, that's just the way the psyche works. What we want to be able to do, though, is recognize that sometimes we just need to control that a bit. If we want to work with other people who have different emotions and different viewpoints or whatever it may be. But if we want to work effectively with other people, because ultimately if we all want to produce or be more productive at work, we do need to be able to work with other people and get along. Therefore, you need to be able to regulate yourself. And I think the concept of just being able to check yourself, just that one thing, because you know when you're feeling, it almost feels like a tide, doesn't it? You go, and you know it. And if you can recognize that,
do that one more time, Kevin. Do that one more time.
It's true, though. It's true. It feels it's a physical thing, and you can feel it. But if you can check yourself and do something, whether that's tap your fingers or whatever, straighten your arm or think what would you? It doesn't matter. If you can just check yourself.
Well, the lesson I gave my cousin was, you always have a choice. Gavin, I told him you always have a choice. And majority of times you can choose to get better, or you can just choose to be bitter. And
well, yes.
So you always have a choice. So let's just make the right choice. Let's take the right fork of the road, and let's always get better. Choose to get better.
Growth mindset.
All right. Well, this has been another episode of Workplace Wizards Podcast, and it was brought to you by Small World Solutions. And our motto is, like Gavin said, if nothing changes if nothing changes. And our goal is for Small World Solutions is to help organizations improve their workplace environment by increasing productivity. All right. So this is another episode of Workplace Wizards saying goodbye for now.
See you soon.